We're live. Looks like the mic works. We got people in the chat over on YouTube. That's good to see. We've got Echoes 1111. Who could that be? First. Looks like Danny. Dana Topor and Profil 44. Now, I've never conducted a live stream exclusively on YouTube where I'm paying attention to the chat, understanding what it means. I don't know what the crown and the number 3. Hey, Dana Topor. I don't know what any of that means. Maybe somebody in the chat knows what that means. Alex of Alder. That looks like Crank. Hey, thanks for joining me on YouTube, guys. I'm doing it on YouTube only today, just to try to get the engagement over to YouTube and feed the algorithm. You guys know what I'm doing over here. What do we have? We got a new app installed. Let me take a look at it. Oh, Dana Topor. Okay, Dana Topor is Ubique. Ubique.tangle.com. Now we know who Dana Topor is. Very good. Okay, this is World Monitor. This was sent to me over the weekend by my sister at Cezanne. I know it's a lot going on. It's a lot to try to take in. And I spent some time with it over the weekend, but I'm not an expert. So we might have to spend some time today figuring this out together. What's interesting is on top, we've got the Pentagon Pizza Index at DEFCON 5. DEFCON 5. Which I think DEFCON 5 is good, right? DEFCON 1 would be bad. So the Pentagon Pizza Index, what that is, it's a bit clever. It's showing you how busy the pizza restaurants are near the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. Because some clever people found out that right before some major military engagements, the staff's working late at the Pentagon, and they're ordering pizza. So the number of pizza pies delivered in the Pentagon neighborhood of Washington, D.C. is represented on the pizza index. So far, so good, but it is only 10:23 in the a.m. at the Pentagon. Yes, Echoes 1111, we know who you are. It's Danny. Danny.tangle.com. Now, what else do we have? So this map on World Monitor will move around as things happen. And I've tried to tune the settings in such a way so that we're getting the Middle East. And you can see here I've selected conflict zones, military bases. Here we go. Here's a headline. Kenya and Russia agree no Kenyans will be recruited for the Ukraine war. I don't know what level of headlines we're going to get on this. I'm sure that's a huge relief to somebody, mostly Kenyans. Military activity, and I think that is it. That's what I'm showing on the map. So if we go, let me just take a look here. On the map, it's saying right here, near this island. That looks like near Bahrain. Persian Gulf Naval Group, 2 vessels in transit right there. Tehran has IRGC activity. Israel-Lebanon border is the conflict zone. If something happens, if there's any rocket, drone, or missile alerts in Israel, I'll pull that up on the stream. At the moment, we got the headlines, just for the moment. In fact, there's a 4-vessel naval unit in the Eastern Mediterranean. What happens if I click this? Ooh, that is data. We've got the USS Roosevelt, the USS Bulkley, the USS Oscar Austin, and the USS Thomas Hudner, all U.S. naval ships, all destroyers. Let me pull one of those up. I'll pull up the USS Roosevelt. I believe this is it. So USS Roosevelt DDG-80 is an active Arleigh Burke-class Aegis guided missile destroyer in the U.S. Navy, commissioned in 2000. This says forward deployed to Rota, Spain. She is east of that now. And it says she specializes in ballistic missile defense and maritime security operations for the U.S. Sixth Fleet. Antonia Yang, Y1W, Ni hao. Antonio Yang, Y1W is in the chat, everybody. Welcome to Antonio Yang. The USS Roosevelt has 300 crew members. It is, how am I going to do that? It's 510 feet long, which is about, I guess, 120 meters, about that. Operational area is the Mediterranean Sea and surrounding areas. And as of early 2026, the ship has been operated in the CENTCOM area of responsibility, including transiting the Strait of Hormuz in the Arabian Gulf. Okay. We got a picture here. It's a big one. It's a big one. So the Aegis, this is an Aegis destroyer. The Aegis system is an advanced radar that is integrated with air defense. I'm doing this from memory. Anyone in the chat can check me on this. But an Aegis ship would have surface-to-air missiles meant to intercept inbound threats, and the Aegis radar system does all the direction and targeting. So they say that this thing is intended to combat inbound ballistic missiles. Let me go back to the world monitor. So we have those 4 ships just north of Libya, and they're probably, does this give us a transit vector? They are in transit, but I don't have anything more than that. I imagine they're going over close to the Israeli shoreline. Echoes 1111 says, I fear the Marines will be sitting ducks to first-person view fiber optic drones once they land on that island. We do have that as a headline. In fact, we're representing it twice on the headlines. We've got the Karg Island strike, and then we've got U.S. Marines inbound. We can do that now. Let me pull up a map here. Okay, Karg Island is in the northern end of the Persian Gulf. I'm zooming in on it now. It's not a large island. I believe it's less than 10 kilometers long. So that is Karg Island. And 90% of the Iranian oil exports flow through that island onto the cargo vessels. You can see on the right side of this, let me move that a little bit. You can see on the right side, there's a very long dock and a very large ship parked at that dock. Now, this is not current. This is satellite imagery from who knows when. But Karg Island, which is what we're looking at, was hit right after the markets closed on Friday by the U.S. and probably Israel. And they said that they were striking only military targets. And you have to be precise to do that, because you can see, starting in the center of the, let me zoom in even more here. That's a lot of oil tanks. That is a lot of oil tanks. So that is the purpose of this island. And Echoes 1111 in the chat is saying that if you take this, if you put boots on the ground and occupy Karg Island to take the oil revenue away from Iran, those Marines, assuming that they're Marines, would be high value targets, and not far away from the mainland of Iran. Let's see how far that is. Looks like it's about 15 or 20 miles. So well within range of a lot of low-end munitions from Iran, if they choose. Now, let me pull up. I'm going to try to pull up a story on the U.S. Marines. I'm going to try to pick something that is not paywalled. I guess we'll go with military.com. Let's hope that works out. So here we go. Military.com, how the U.S. sending Marines to the Strait of Hormuz signals a posture shift. Hey there, Salfrodo's in the chat. Look at that, giving us a thumbs up. Let's see here. I'm going to get to some details. I would expect that military.com would tell us the unit that is being shipped. I have seen the unit called out in other sources. Here we go. Okay. So U.S. officials said the deployment includes element of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit and the amphibious assault ship, the USS Tripoli. The force could include roughly 2,500 Marines, along with additional sailors operating the amphibious ships that carry them. Marine Expeditionary Units, otherwise called MEUs, serve as the Marine Corps' primary crisis response force. Each MEU typically includes an infantry battalion, an aviation element with helicopters and tilt-rotor aircraft, those are Ospreys, and a logistics component capable of sustaining operations ashore. So 2,500 Marines, that is a heavy load. That is a heavy load. And it's probably, 2,500 Marines is probably the number, maybe up to 5,000. And there may be more than 2,500 on the way, by the way. But that force should be able to take and hold something like Karg Island. Now, Echoes 1111 is saying that they'd be easy targets. It's we've been hearing from the Trump administration for almost a week probably that, quote, Iran has nothing left. They have run through their missiles, their drones, and probably to a lesser extent their rockets. They would know better than we know. It's hard to take them at their word while they're saying they have nothing left, but launches continue. But you can see that the number of missiles and drones that are being deployed by Iran is dropping pretty fast. I can probably find. Let me see what I can find here. Let me switch over to this. We'll go back to military.com here in a second. So Gemini is saying that based on reports from early March 2026, Iran has launched thousands of missiles and drones at neighboring Gulf states, with one report suggesting over 2,000 to 3,000 projectiles used in a regional escalation. The UAE has received the highest concentration with at least 268 missiles and 1,500 drones. I've seen that. I've seen double that number, maybe on more recent reports. But the cadence is the thing here. So in the opening days of this conflict, Iran was sending hundreds of missiles and hundreds of drones at a country like the UAE. It's now sending about 10% of that daily. So maybe 10 missiles and maybe 30 drones is what they're doing right now. Now, over the weekend, we were getting reports that not only are the Iranian missile, drone, and rocket inventories getting low, but so are the inventories on the Israeli and U.S. side of interceptors, the defense against those missiles, drones, and rockets. And then Trump came out on Air Force One yesterday. He was flying back from Mar-a-Lago to Washington, D.C., and he said, we basically have infinity. We have infinity weapons. Don't worry about that. Again, he's not reading that off a card, right? You can send Donald Trump in with talking points, and that's all you can do. You can't guarantee what he's gonna say. All right, back to military.com. So here we go. This is what the headline was implying. Let me try to select this. How does that look? The deployment represents a shift in the Marine Force posture. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit normally operates in the Western Pacific from bases in Okinawa, Japan. And it says sending the unit towards the Middle East could temporarily reduce Marine amphibious presence in that theater. Well, I don't know if it could. I think it does. I don't know what's hard about that. So there's some talk that this unit, the 31st MEU, is in position to defend against a Chinese move on Taiwan. And it is. Okinawa, Japan is not far from Taiwan. Echoes 1111 says Iran already started using fiber optic FPV drones in Iraq this week. I saw a report. I don't know. Since I don't remember the name of the missile, and I certainly don't remember how to spell it, I'm gonna have a hard time looking it up. Let me put this back. The report and Iran was bragging about this, and the U.S. U.S. media at least was criticizing this. Iran is saying that they are going to start using liquid-propelled missiles. They're going to start doing that, which implies that so far they've been using solid fuel rockets, solid fuel missiles, the ballistic missiles that go nearly to orbit and then come down essentially from space. Now, I think that Iran was saying that these liquid-propelled missiles may have better range, may be more technically advanced, and that this is real bad news for everybody. That's what Iran's saying. The Western media that I saw said, while all those things may be true, what Iran said to describe those liquid-propelled missiles, what's also true is that those missiles take hours to prep for launch. Hours. So you got to roll them out of some facility, put them in position, and then start fueling the whatever they're using, the fuel and the liquid oxygen to do a launch. And I don't think that the United States has air superiority in Iran. I think they have air domination in Iran. So you don't want to be on the missile crew that requires a couple hours out in the open before you can light the fuse. So we'll have to see how that goes for Iran. Oh, Ms. Red Terry 143, we know who that is. And she is in the chat. Appreciate that, Ms. Red Terry. Thanks for joining us. Now I'm looking at this from the YouTube dashboard. We've got 9 concurrent viewers, and then it says there's a chat rate of 3. What does that mean? Here's the explanation. What is the chat rate? It's the chat rate of the stream. I mean, it's not wrong. It's also not helpful. Shahana's in the chat. Shohan, not one, is in the chat. Ms. Red Terry is asking in the chat, if your government wanted you to be enlisted and fight, would you? Well, Ms. Red Terry, you can answer that too, because and the headline on the top of the stream is what triggers World War III? Okay, what triggers World War III? We know that for a couple years at least, the China Navy has been harassing Philippine either Navy, Coast Guard, or fishing boats. We know that. So would you, Ms. Red Terry, would you enlist and fight? I suppose you'd be fighting against China. Personally, I think I've aged out of the draft. I have aged out. I'm 55. Oh, Shohana, it's not like that. It's not like that, Shohana. But no, I would not enlist and fight in this conflict. I don't think so far I haven't seen any information that makes it clear to me that what's going on in Iran has to be solved at the cost of U.S. lives. I haven't seen that. What about you guys? Echoes 1111. Are you enlisting? You are in prime fighting shape, I'm sure. All right, let me take a look on a World Monitor and see what else is going on. The pizza shops have not opened up around the Pentagon. Pizza shops have not opened up. Let's see what this has. So the 2 alerts that we've got on World Monitor right there are telling us about the stability rating of the UAE and Ukraine. And we've got this panel right here. I'm scrolling it for you just so you know what I'm looking at. So World Monitor, this app, is curating and aggregating all the headlines around the world and using that to come up with an instability score. And all of these look much better than they did yesterday. So Ukraine yesterday was orange. It was 70% unstable. Now it's 46. Ms. Red Terry says, my generation is a clown. Shohana says, I don't want to talk about the war. I got no choice, Shohana. I got no choice. Iran, Russia, these are all leading the world in instability. Then Israel and China. China's interesting. Now, the thing about this World Monitor, I've in playing around with it, I haven't been able to find out how to look at the headlines that are driving these numbers. So it's just kind of a black box number to me so far. But we're all getting familiar with it. Echoes 1111. Thanks for the shout out. He says, thumbs up this video. Yeah. We're doing this for the algorithm, people. We're doing it for the algorithm. World news headlines. Now I have filtered these headlines for, I think, the war. So that should be what we see the most of. Let me pull this up. Got to do this. We got an alert. Looks like an alert on the confrontation line on the border between Israel and Lebanon. Those look like rocket alerts. So headline, falling oil prices send Wall Street towards its best day since the start of the Iran war. Let's take a look. Yeah, I don't think they're falling relative to where they left off on Friday. Maybe they are. Maybe they are. It's going sideways a little bit, but down 1.5% since I guess probably since Friday. Now the oil markets opened up last night at 6 o'clock Eastern, and they opened at 98.7. And then they went up to 102, 103 last night on open, but they're down from that. So we're watching that. Now the other thing that's interesting, let me go back to let me just go back to CNBC for a second. So the S&P 500 is up about 1%, NASDAQ about 1%. That's just bringing back where it was at open on Friday, I think. Now on the bonds, we can see that rates are going down in the U.S., which weakens the dollar. Last week we were seeing strengthening of the dollar, and today looks like we're seeing a pullback on that. And we can see that here in the FX, the foreign exchange. The euro last week was on the low side of 114. Now it's on the high side of 114. So not much happening there. Not much happening there. But what's interesting is gold. Gold is down nearly below 5,000. And, what was it, 3 weeks ago? When were these highs? Yeah, call it 3 weeks ago. The narrative was gold is reemerging as a safe haven asset, and Bitcoin's not. So one of them's failing and not doing what they're supposed to, and the other one is. Now we're seeing headlines that are the opposite of that. 3 weeks later, now they're saying gold is not acting as a safe haven asset, and crypto is. So there's Bitcoin up to almost 2.5% today. Everyone's talking about Oliver in the chat, which is totally cool. That's my godson. Yeah, Misfit Terry, you're right. The interesting parts of war are who's behind it and who benefits. That's what Misfit Terry is saying. Oh, Shohana says, I always avoid war news when sensitive content shows up, like injured people, dead bodies, and crying kids. I can't see that. I'm not going to show any of that, Shohana. I never will. Certainly not intentionally, because I'm sensitive to that too. I don't need any of that. So I won't show that. You're safe here on this stream. I will take it as an opportunity to say that I don't like the way that some coverage of wars makes it seem like a team sport that's all fun and games. You're cheering on one team, you're rooting for the other one to fail. That's a bit gross to me. Because as Shohana says, there's a lot of suffering going on. There's suffering with people that have real relationships with people that have nothing to do with this. They're just caught up in it, and that we always have to keep that in mind. Yeah, Mr. Terry agrees with that. So we're safe here, Shahana. We're not going to get into any of that stuff. Okay, now I'm back on the world monitor. I'm on the right side. I'll scroll this. This is what I'm looking at over here. This is actually a pretty cool feature of world monitor. So you can select internet cables, oil pipelines, marine ports, and choke points. I've selected choke points, and then I selected the Strait of Hormuz. And you can analyze the impact. I'll do that now. See if it updates. Maybe it's already analyzed. So here are the 7 countries most affected. This is interesting. The 7 countries most affected by a crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. Japan, South Korea, right? We know that the majority of the oil coming out of the Persian Gulf through the Strait of Hormuz, we know that that is servicing Asia. We also know, now Ms. Red Terry is on the ground in Asia right now. We were getting word last week from one of our viewers in the Philippines that the cost of gasoline and diesel at the pump was skyrocketing. It was making 20% plus moves overnight last week. So we're going to confirm that Asia is most impacted by a crisis in the Strait of Hormuz, and in particular, Japan and South Korea, because those are closer allies to the United States. So you don't see China on that list. It was on that list, but now it's not. And I think the reason that China is no longer listed as being largely affected by the Strait of Hormuz is because Iran has come out and said that they're allowing all oil cargo tankers to pass through the Strait of Hormuz as long as they are not aligned with Israel or the United States. Japan and South Korea are associated with the United States. Then you've got Qatar and the UAE. Now, that's a different, they're affected in a different way, I believe. So Japan and South Korea are customers of oil. Qatar and UAE are sellers of oil. So they're impacted by that. Then you've got India and China. So it says China, 30% of their oil comes in from the Strait of Hormuz. But Iran's saying they're allowing that oil to pass to China. And then Iran is listed as being affected at 20%. So what happens when Karg Island, assuming it gets taken offline, what happens to the affected rate of Iran then? Okay, we've got breaking news. Breaking news. Al Jazeera says that the EU leaders are rejecting military involvement in the Strait of Hormuz amid the war in Iran. EU leaders are rejecting military involvement in the Strait of Hormuz. So Trump is attempting to build a coalition, a naval coalition, that of allied countries that will go to the Strait of Hormuz and make efforts to keep it moving, to not allow it to close. And he was expecting to enlist minesweepers and other naval assets from allied countries to support in that. Now, he also said that if they don't want to do it, that's fine with him too, that he doesn't actually need the help. But since America is has the potential to be self-sufficient in oil, Trump is saying that he is solving this problem for other countries more than the United States, the Strait of Hormuz specifically, and he's not willing to do that to the benefit of other countries that are not willing to help themselves. That's Trump's position, which is fair. That is a fair position in every regard. Everything I just said that Trump said is fair. I don't think the United States military needs help from anyone for anything. I don't. And if the action that the U.S. military is doing, which is coming at large expense, if that helps other countries more than the U.S., then there needs to be more of a transactional agreement between the United States and those countries. I agree with that. Antonia Yang says, war, winner takes all. Let's see, what other headlines can we get off World Monitor? Trump and his officials pressure the news media in unison as Iran war scrutiny intensifies. Now, I don't know if the nature of this article is related to what Trump was saying yesterday from Air Force One. He also posted on True Social, very long post, and he really went off the chain. He was saying that everything you see reported in the media that doesn't reinforce the idea that the United States and Israel are dominating this and that Iran has no chance, no inventory, no hope. He's saying all that's fake news. And he says anything that you see that disagrees with that is artificial intelligence. It's all AI. Now, to some extent, that's true. I have seen, there's a caveat on what I'm about to say, but I have seen so much AI slop videos in support of Iran on the X feeds that it's crazy. If I'm looking for something to show you guys, I have to ignore 10 things to find one. So there's that, but I don't know to what extent that AI slop, the fake news, is getting picked up, regurgitated, and pushed out by the mainstream media. I can't go that far. I don't know about that. BBC is saying that Iran is taking steps to prevent anti-establishment protests. That is by way of Tehran residents to the BBC. So there were, prior to this conflict starting off with Israel and the United States, there were what we believe were large-scale protests happening within Iran. The Iranian people protesting the Iranian government. We got word, I don't know how good the source is, but we got word that Iran killed at least 32,000 of those protesters. That's the word that we got. And then, of course, one of the incidents that Trump mentioned in regards to the fake news and the AI was a video that was coming out of Iran that showed 250,000 people gathering in support of the current regime. He said that's fake. Johanna says, Ms. Ray Terry, the host is an American. That is true. You're talking about me, right, Johanna? I'm the host, and I am an American. Ms. Ray Terry says, America is always present in every chaotic activity outside their premises. Yeah, more so than I would like. More so than I would like. But who am I? I'm just a potential United States presidential candidate for 2028. But that's been on my profile at price.tangle.com for almost a year now, maybe at least a year. I added a question mark to the end of that one. That's now got a question mark on it. Look for yourself. What I'm saying is true. Now, so we had a headline, we had breaking news just moments ago that the EU is refusing to help keep the Strait of Hormuz open with their navies. And that was reported by Al Jazeera. Here we see 2 hours ago that doesn't seem to be entirely true. The headline here from AP News is the EU wants to know more before agreeing to Trump's Hormuz warship demands. Now, when I was watching coverage of this last night, it seemed as if the sticking point with the EU was whether or not their warships would go in and assist during hostilities or after hostilities were over, which to me makes no sense. If hostilities are over, why is there a risk in the Strait of Hormuz? I mean, if there's any incident in the Strait of Hormuz that increases the risk, then hostilities are not over. So that seems like the EU negotiating to stretch it out where they've already decided. They've already decided. So I don't know whether to believe AP 2 hours ago or Al Jazeera 12 minutes ago. I don't know. BBC World is saying that Iran hit key UAE oil ports and the Dubai airport. Let's see. Let's check in flights. Let's see if flights are going into Dubai right now. Dubai is here. That is an Emirates plane, a 777 that just departed Dubai. So Dubai airport is open right now. There's another 777 on Emirates landing in Dubai from Mumbai. So it looks like that's open. The Dubai airport is currently open. Yesterday it was not. Yesterday evening, East Coast time, that airport was all the planes were circling. They're in a hold pattern. Mizrat Terry says some Iranians want to be liberated. Some are conservatives. Yeah, well, I don't know what percentage of Iranian wants to replace their leadership. I don't know. Now, speaking of their leadership, last week the new supreme leader was announced, and I think it's Mojtaba Khomeini. I'm sure I got the first name wrong because that was from memory. Questions are being asked. Where is the guy? Where is the supreme leader? Because there were some reports that the supreme leader of Iran is actually not in Iran, that he was pretty severely wounded during the opening strikes on February 28th. I saw the term disfigured. And the word is over the weekend that the supreme leader of Iran went to seek medical treatment in Moscow. Antonia Yang says the gold price will decrease soon. The gold price will decrease soon. It is at 5,001, down just over 1% today. So gold started to rip at the end of July last year. Actually, you could say that the impulse was August. Mid-August last year, there was an impulse. This pattern started last August. It's a solid graph. The chart is solid. It could fall down to previous levels of support. Where would that be? There's some small support here. It looks like in the 4,900 range. We've got three lows right around there. So that would be the first support, 4,900. And it could get there fast. That is a small percent move from 5,001. Ms. Terry, are you accusing Antonia Yang Y1W as being our good friend Time Fungus? Did I miss that? Is that what's happening right now? So the next stop, and it is going down. It's trending down. 70 cents to go, and then it breaks 5,000. It just went up a little bit on a tick. So 4,600, about. That is the close on February 2nd, 4,600. So that would be down about 9% from where we are now. There's a little bit of support there. Same thing on January 14th. So there's a little support almost there on the day after Christmas. So about 4,600 would be the next one after, was it 48? So it'd be 48 then 46. That is gold. This is, let me scroll down a little bit here. How's this going to work? So we got this area that I'm scrolling right here, right in the middle, predictions. This is pulling markets in from Kalshi or Polymarket, I think. The first one is, will Chelsea Clinton, the daughter of Bill and Hillary Clinton, will Chelsea Clinton win the 2028 Democratic presidential nomination? I suppose that's $835,000 in that market. And the consensus is 99% no for Chelsea Clinton. I can't see Tim. Who's Tim? I mean, I know who Tim is, but I can't see him. I can't see you, Tim. Tim is in stage 3? Good Lord. What are we going to do if someone gets to stage 3? I have no idea. Here's a market. Will the Fed increase interest rates, increase rates? Oh, it's 100% no. That's what the market's saying. 100% no. Will Mike Pence win the 2028 Republican presidential nomination? 99% no. How about LeBron James? 99% no. Will the Iranian regime fall by March 31st? $35 million on that market, and 97% of people say no. We talked about these markets last week. I am not sure. I mean, if you want to bet somebody on will the Iranian regime fall by March 31st, you got to be real clear on what the definition of the regime and falling are if you're going to put your money on this. And somebody in the chat, if anyone in the chat has used any of these prediction markets like Kalshi or Polymarket, let us know who decides whether the outcome was a pass or fail. Is it the person that created the market, or is it the platform itself? Felita's in the chat on YouTube. Love to see that. Yeah, Ms. Red Terry, we're talking about betting. We are talking about betting. But I'm questioning whether or not it's smart to bet on something if it's not very tightly defined. And once it's tightly defined, how well is the outcome moderated? Who's deciding? Here we got oil. Will crude oil hit $100 by the end of March? So back to my question, who's determining the outcome of these? It's over 100 right now. And today is by the end of March. They didn't put a year on there. What are they talking about? March 2025? In March 2026, oil has hit 100. And yet, 21% of the people say no, it won't. Now they're saying CL, they're using a ticker. Let's see what that is. That is Colgate Palmolive. That is toothpaste and dish soap. So that didn't work. But I think that all the oil indexes, you've got at least two, WTI and Brent crude, I believe that during the month of March, they have each hit and exceeded $100. So Ms. Red Terry, are you betting these markets? And if so, can you help us out? How does it work? Oh, here's slightly off topic, but there's $30 million on the table. Will Trump acquire Greenland before 2027? Again, hard to know what acquire means. If you're putting money on it, you got to know what that means. According to whoever decides. And I don't know who that is. Ms. Terry is just happy that we're betting. And I don't blame her. Maybe look for some more updates for you guys. All right, let's take a look at this together. We got this from our friends over at Zero Hedge. Allies balk as Trump pushes joint military action to reopen Hormuz. So balk means they are resisting. The Allies resist Trump's proposal for joint military action to reopen Hormuz. Iran says there is no ceasefire on the table. Iran's taken the position of strength on that and saying, we don't want this to stop. We don't want it to stop. Oh, I'm getting comment. I just got a comment from Time Fungus. Time Fungus is using the only chat on the planet that we can rely on, which is at tangle.com, where he's transmitting to me that it's a great stream to find out that his comments are getting shadow banned in the chat. Well, Time Fungus, we'd love to have you on the stream. I did not do anything to ban you from the chat, so all we have to go on from there is your previous behavior on other videos on YouTube. What could you have done? What could you have done? But Ms. Red Terry sees you. I just don't see you. I guess. Headlines from Zero Hedge. This is to summarize the weekend. Trump declares victory while simultaneously urging the coalition to help. President Trump claimed that the U.S. has essentially defeated Iran and vowed we will finish the job, while pressing NATO allies and other countries to join a naval coalition to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. We were talking, it was Danny, Maya, and I. We were talking on a stream last week about what constitutes a world war. I'm going to ask Gemini. Because that is the title of the video on YouTube, and that is the headline on the stream here. So Gemini says a world war is a widespread international conflict involving most of the world's major powers, fought across multiple continents and oceans. Nailed it. That is exactly what we said on the stream the other week. You have to, in order for something to qualify, in my mind, as a world war, you have to include at least two superpowers, and I would say at least three continents. And you can interchange oceans and continents. So if you had two superpowers who were engaging in the Pacific, the Indian, and the Atlantic Ocean, I would say that qualifies. Now, I saw a report that China and Russia are now offering military support to Iran. I did see that. And maybe we'll see that in some other news here. English X7SQ says they really made me switch accounts. Can I see something on that profile image? Not really. Not really. But, I mean, the evidence that we have here, we have no idea who that is, obviously. But anyone who spells English, Englisch, sounds German to me. They sound German. They sound German. Iran rejects ceasefire and signals escalation. the Iranian foreign minister dismissed any truce, saying Tehran wants the war to end in a way that ensures enemies never again think of repeating these attacks, adding that they have sent no messages and do not request a ceasefire. So Iran's strategy last week in particular was not trying to beat the United States in Israel militarily, but instead to apply pressure to neighboring countries, the exportation of energy, and the global economy. And I think that if that's what they're trying to do, they're doing a pretty good job of that. I think they're doing what they can in a way that is having results. And according to the foreign minister, they're not stopping. They're not stopping, and they're not talking about stopping. The United States is weighing major escalation at Karg Island. What does it take to get Karg Island back on the map? Something like that? Something like that. There's Karg Island. You've got a runway in the northeast. You've got oil facilities in the central south. And then you've got community. You've got neighborhoods and grocery stores and stuff like that. This is Karg Island. Karg Island was struck by the United States on Friday after the markets closed, and the strikes were against military targets on Karg Island. And then we don't have confirmation of it, but we can associate the fact that they're softening up the defenses of Karg Island at the same time that a Marine Expeditionary Unit is moving from the east or the Western Pacific to the Middle East. At least 2,500 Marines. And Danny was in the chat saying they're going to be easy targets. They will be targets, but like I said, I believe that the United States has not air superiority, but air domination over Iran. So that is comforting if you're a Marine on the ground. Now, Marines have a tough job. They have a tough job. The other branches of the military, the Army specifically, refers to Marines as bullet cushions. Bullet cushions. They stormed the beach. They are the first in on the ground, except for the parachute boys. So the Marines have tough missions. They have expectations around that. They practice for it. That is what they do. Ms. Red Terry says military alliances are starting to build up, obviously. Just to finish up on that Karg Island headline, it says the White House is considering seizing Iran's main oil export hub on Karg Island, a move that would require U.S. boots on the ground. That is the first time I have seen that from a reputable source. Seizing the island, boots on the ground. I think 5,000 U.S. Marines and air superiority, air domination is adequate for Karg Island. Just my 2 cents. And no, Ms. Ratteri, I do not want to be one of those Marines. I am not signing up. Europe is reluctant to join Hormuz operation. Reluctant is not rejecting or refusing. It's not sure yet. Not sure yet. So that also disagrees with the Al Jazeera headline that we saw. Germany outright rejects it alongside Italy and Greece. So it sounds as if some of the EU countries are thinking about it, considering what conditions would allow them to agree to that. But Germany, Italy, and Greece don't want any part of it. We get these alerts We get these alerts on World Monitor. Keyword spike. The keyword demand is trending. I don't think that's useful at all. 8 mentions across 2 sources. 7 times baseline. Looks like this may have something to do with NVIDIA. We don't care. We don't care. Not about NVIDIA. Not today. I mean, if you wanted me to, I could do 5 hours streaming on NVIDIA and AI. I could. But that would require a different thumbnail. That's asking a lot. Regional attacks and oil shock intensify. Iran continues missile and drone strikes on Gulf energy infrastructure and U.S.-aligned states, while Israeli forces launch wide-scale strikes. Saudi and Dubai continue to get hit. That's a headline. There's a picture of airstrikes on an oil depot in Tehran, the capital of Iran. Now, somebody tried to coach me into pronouncing Iran and Iraq the same way that I would pronounce Italy. So Iran, Iraq. I guess I got to work on that. Iran. An oil strike on a depot was struck in Iran. There you go. That was so smooth. Trump says, as far as I'm concerned, we have essentially defeated Iran. They want to negotiate badly. They said that they don't. And he says they should want that, but I don't think they're ready to do what they have to do. We will finish the job. And then Zero Hedge follows up. Good job, Zero Hedge. The Iranian foreign minister rejected calls for a ceasefire, insisting that Tehran intends to impose steep and bloody costs on the aggressors. Shohana says, when will crypto pump? The 2025 bull run prediction went wrong. Crypto is pumping. I would say crypto is pumping. It's up 3.3% today. And in the last month, I guess we'll start it from here. It's up more than $5,000. Bitcoin's up more than $5,000, nearly 10% in this month. That's better than a pump. I mean, if you can string a couple 10% months together, I like that. Antonia Yang says we've got 70% oil increase at the moment from 55 pesos to 85 pesos and expected to hit 100% by this week. That means from 55 pesos per liter, it will go up 100 to 105 pesos. What will be the max? So, Antonio, are you coming in from the Philippines? I'm only guessing that because of the pesos. I don't think that oil at 200 is outrageous. I think we are 1 or 2 headlines away from that. We've been covering this. Let's go to Brent crude and go to an all-time chart. You can see here in 2008, oil was at 140. The high was 143. That was the high. I assume it's an all-time high, but this is as far as this particular chart goes. So we are about 40, just call it $40. We're $40 away from the all-time high. And keep in mind, as I've mentioned every time I've looked at this chart, keep in mind that the purchasing power of a dollar in 2008 could be 50% higher than it is today. And at the time, in 2008, I don't believe that there was a supply side or a buy side shock in the oil market. You've got the mother of all supply shocks right now in the Strait of Hormuz. So breaking 140, I think, should be an easy thing to do. If oil wants to go up, 140 is nothing. 200, I would say, is in reach. Double. And then the question is, at what point does demand destruction come into play? And how strong is that demand destruction? So oil gets expensive enough that discretionary use of oil declines, which makes it harder for the price of oil to continue higher because demand starts to fall off. So enjoy the pump, Shohana. Enjoy the pump. Shohana says, my asset value goes down to 3x. I'm not patient enough to hold. Hold. I'm keeping you in mind, Shahana, with what I choose to show and not show. I'm showing this. BBC News 3 hours ago, Iran hits key United Arab Emirates oil port and the Dubai airport 3 hours ago. Shahana says, does this war cause more inflation all over the globe? Absolutely. It is absolutely an inflationary event. The price of oil affects every physical good. Not only from so you've got energy generation, which a lot of places are using petroleum. You've got so that's for the production. You've got oil used as an ingredient in production, plastics and synthetics. And then you've got transportation. You can't get the product out of the factory without oil. So oil inflates the price of every physical good and some virtual goods because of electricity. Oil is also a key component, not just from a logistics standpoint, but from a manufacturing standpoint, is a key ingredient to fertilizers for agriculture. And it's, normally, so the other thing that causes inflation is a weakening of the currency. And it seems as if the United States and the US dollar is the currency fighting that force by itself, it seems. So it seems like the dollar, at least last week, was strengthening against all of the fiat currencies. I'm looking for updates to give you guys. We're talking about weapon stockpiles. Who runs out of weapons first? Iran's offensive weapons or the U.S.-Israel alliance defensive weapons? Who runs out first? And one of the things that Trump said from Air Force One yesterday was that the main defense contractors are all ramping up factories and production capabilities. Combine that with Anduril, which is a startup, a defense contracting startup run by Lucky Palmer, the guy who invented the Oculus glasses. He started a defense company after he got his money from Oculus. He started it in 2017 or 2018, I think. They just got a $20 billion contract from the Pentagon and have begun construction of a 3 million square foot manufacturing facility. 3 million square feet is huge, huge. I've spent time working in warehouses that are 1 million square feet, and those are about a kilometer long. You're standing in, you're in the building, you're looking down an aisle of shelves and racks and products and people, and it's a 1 kilometer view. So it's 3 of those. And Anduril, their focus is on automated weapons, AI integration into weapons, low cost, drone warfare, drone defense warfare. They are cutting edge. They're coming up. Aladino says hello in the chat. Hi, boss. That's Aladino. Here's a report from 13 hours ago from Emirates. We talked about this. All flights into and out of Dubai International Airport have been temporarily suspended. Please do not go to the airport. What they don't say is that it's because missiles are falling down into the airport. That's what they didn't say. There's an animation from Marine Radar of an oil tanker, the Karachi, an Aframax class vessel carrying crude from Abu Dhabi. Now, I don't know where that's going. I don't know if that's heading to China. But what's interesting about this, and Iran is not part of the BRICS nations. That is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. But Iran came out last week, or maybe late last week, maybe the weekend, and said, we're allowing oil to pass through the Strait of Hormuz if it was paid for in Chinese yuan, the Chinese currency. And the Chinese probably love that. They probably love that because the petrodollar is the name for, we talked about this last week. It's when the dollar stopped being backed by gold and transitioned into an arrangement with Saudi Arabia where they would only sell oil in US dollars. That's what made the US dollar the global reserve currency. And it gives the US a big advantage. The lifestyle in the United States is higher because the dollar is the US reserve currency. So now Iran is working with China and saying, if the oil is denominated not in dollars but in yuan, it can pass. And I guess that's their way of preventing any ally of the United States or Israel from passing the Strait of Hormuz. You see there that it says the Karachi oil tanker is an Aframax class vessel. Those names are pretty cool. That means that there's some relationship there with the continent of Africa. And generally, so I'm going to guess what that means. It means that ship is too large to pass through. It could mean that it's too large to pass through the Suez Canal. And then if it was going to transit Africa, it would have to go around the Cape. You've got a Panamax class, which is as big as you can be and still get through the Panama Canal. I had never heard Aframax before. I had heard of Panamax, and I know that's what that means. So it's a big ship. I'm just going to look that up. Make sure I got that right. So I think Aframax is smaller than Panamax. They say Aframax is between 80 and 120,000 metric tons. It says, due to their favorable size, Aframax tankers can serve most ports in the world. The vessels serve regions that do not have very large ports or offshore oil terminals to accommodate very large crude carriers and ultra-large crude carriers. So maybe Aframax means that it is small enough to get through the Suez Canal. The Wikipedia page doesn't really make that clear. That footage is claimed to be coming out of Dubai. It says, it is morning now in Dubai, and the fuel depot near Dubai International Airport is still burning after last night's successful drone attack. So they're saying that is the fuel depot serving the Dubai airport. Now, Echoes 1111 was in the chat earlier saying that they say that Iran is using FPV drones, first-person view, where you're wearing a headset, goggles, and your eyes are being presented with the feed from a camera on the drone. A human operator like that is as precise as you need to be. That makes a dumb munition a smart munition. It doesn't scale well, but you can hit a tank of gas. I'm watching a video. I want to make sure it's safe for Shohana. I think we can pass on that. Okay, here we go. I mentioned this before, but I said I couldn't look up details because I didn't remember the name or the spelling of a Shahil missile. Shahil. Iran unleashes the dancing missile on enemies. Here's why Shahil is a game changer. On Sunday, Tehran launched the two-stage solid fuel medium range. I thought it was liquid fuel. Nicknamed the dancing missile for its unpredictable flight path. So it can reach Israel. It's got up to a 1,000 kilogram, 2,000 pound payload. Solid fuel. So did I get this backwards? Have they been using liquid fuel rockets until now, and now they're bringing out the solid fuel, which can launch that much faster? This says it doesn't need minutes of vulnerable fueling time, hours. It can sit ready, launch in seconds, and move before satellites can spot it. Well, it cannot sit ready. It has to launch in seconds. The Shahil family is designed for one purpose: saturation, to overwhelm air defenses. So how many of those things, I guess I'll just spell it. How many of those things does Iran have? I lost it. Where'd it go? How do I spell it? S-E-J-J. So Gemini says that Iran maintains a total arsenal of 2,500 to 3,000 ballistic missiles, and specific inventory numbers for the Shahil are not publicly disclosed. I think that there have been reports of at least 1,000 ballistic missiles having had been launched so far. And if 1,000 were launched, you'd have to assume that at least another 1,000 were destroyed on the ground. Here is video footage presented by Breaking 911 showing missiles raining down on Iranian regime targets in Tehran. That's a lot of destruction. It's a lot of smoke. You could see the projectile coming in, but you couldn't really see the impact because there was already so much smoke. Here's a post. I won't show it. I'll just tell you what it says. It is from the Iran military media. Independent media. We urgently thank Emirates for this critical message of warning people to avoid the airport. They're thanking. Thank you. Here's a post. I don't know how credible this is. This is from Mr. Crypto Whale. 6,000 followers. They're saying if Dubai is in trouble, the city of Dubai is in trouble. Now, we know that Dubai is a representation of the UAE trying to transition their economy away from oil into other things, tourism, tax haven, and other industries. That was an objective. That's why they've got the best of the best buildings in Dubai. And Mr. Crypto Whale is saying that Dubai is screwed right now. And if you want to know how much, don't watch the oil prices, don't watch the stock market, watch used cars listings. It says in expat economies, and Dubai does have a big expatriate community, the car is the most liquid big asset people own. When fear hits, people don't just panic, they prepare to exit. And exiting Dubai means dumping your car fast. We do know that social media influencers who set up in Dubai from other countries have been getting out of there. We also know that those influencers a lot of times have arrangements with the UAE government to give out glowing reviews of life in the UAE. And those influencers were putting on a good face in light of attacks at the beginning. Then the content started to shift from things are fine to I am at the airport trying to get on a flight out of here. That didn't take long. So this post is saying that tens of thousands of residents and tourists and expats have already left the UAE. The beach bars, the malls, the hotels, empty. International banks pulled employees out. We have seen reports of that. In fact, we've seen bank buildings being struck, high-rise buildings being struck with drones. Iran is threatening to target economic centers and U.S.-linked financial institutions across the Middle East. Dubai airport's been shut down more than once. Iran warned civilians to evacuate the UAE ports. People have been injured from drone debris. And Bloomberg is asking, will Dubai face a Hong Kong-style exodus? I don't know what a Hong Kong-style exodus is. And then Crypto Whale says, you will regret not following me. I'm not following them. American oil executives tell Trump officials the energy crisis has been unleashed and is likely to get worse. That is from the Wall Street Journal. French President Emmanuel Macron has, yesterday they spoke with the Iranian president, asking him to stop attacking neighboring countries. Macron has advice for everybody and no action for himself. He just publicizes his wish list to people and does nothing. In fact, I would characterize the EU in that same way for the last couple of years. More talk than action, more sentiment than policy. Looking at a video here that claims to show Iranian Sigil missiles flying across the Israeli skyline. I'm not sure if it's good enough to show yet. I don't know how they know what kind of missile it is. It's just a dot in the sky. We saw continued use by Iran of cluster munitions against Israel, and I had described what cluster munitions are. It's a bomb case, like a 2,000-pound bomb case, the size of a 2,000-pound bomb case, and it's filled instead with basically hand grenades. They're a little bit bigger than hand grenades. They're about 5 kilos, and they scatter when the munition gets close to the ground. They scatter, and you get a broader impact zone. Then I saw that. In the case of Iran and their use of cluster munitions against Israel last week, the scatter is at a higher altitude, so it's more random, and it does impact civilian targets indiscretionally. We also mentioned last week that the cluster munitions, there is a treaty or an agreement that some nations, about 120 nations, agreed never to use cluster munitions. But the United States has not signed that agreement, and Iran has not signed that agreement. I don't think Israel has either. So I don't know how international law works in a case like that. Now I've got AI intelligence finding from World Monitor saying Bitcoin's price has fallen sharply in the past few weeks, but the market is still afloat. Yeah, it's up today. Intelligence, it's up. It was up all weekend. And it was up at the end of last week too. Bitcoin is up $2,000 today. Let me show you this. That is stock footage, probably from Camp Pendleton in Southern California. This is from Defense Journal. U.S. and Israel prepare for a possible ground invasion of Iran. They're making preparations, according to Israel Channel 14. 2 days ago, the U.S. ordered the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, the MEU, based in China. Let's play that again. This is that is called an LCAC, LCAC. It's a landing craft. They're large. They carry a lot of troops, and they can also carry armored vehicles. And those things, they ferry back and forth between a support ship offshore, and they just drive right up onto the beach. They drive across the water and up onto the beach. They unload. They go back to the support ship and grab another load of equipment and men, the Marines. That is footage of, claiming to be footage of the main port of Fujairah in the UAE being hit by an Iranian drone. Now I can change this infrastructure cascade report that we've got. Let me go ports, Fujairah, analyze impact. Let me put this up on the screen. Guys, I have to take like 2 minutes. I'm going to put this up the screen. I'm going to take 2 minutes. I'll come right back, and then we'll go over the infrastructure cascade for the port of Fujairah. I'm back. I'm back. Is the mic working? It's a complicated stream. Got to drink a lot of water because I'm talking a lot. Then I guess an hour and 40 minutes is about the max that I can do that. Then you got to make sure that you don't go to the bathroom with a hot mic. It's complicated, very complicated. Okay, the port of Fujairah, which let me go back to that so you can see that while I'm reading this. That is the port of Fujairah, the main port in the UAE, which has been attacked. Oil loading operations have been halted for the second time as a precautionary measure. It looks more than precautionary. Okay, the analysis of an impact on the port of Fujairah. UAE is affected. 54% of their capacity is affected. Japan, South Korea, India, all around 30% impact to them. If that port shuts down, that is the impact to UAE, Japan, South Korea, and India, and China, and China. And even if ships are allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz en route to China, it doesn't matter if the refineries or the originating ports are offline, which is what we're seeing there. Of course, we can't know the authenticity of videos like this, but I think we have a growing trust of Mario Nafal. We have been looking at his coverage all last week, and here he's got a video saying that Israel's missile shield, the Iron Dome, might be elite, but Iran is testing the one thing every air defense hates: volume. The real danger is not one perfect missile, it's wave after wave of cheaper drones and ballistic missiles forcing Israel to burn through insanely expensive interceptors. We talked about that. In fact, I saw coverage of Patriot missiles being relocated from South Korea to the Middle East. And of course, the problem is that those Patriot missiles take a long time to manufacture. They're very expensive, millions of dollars for each shot. And they're being used to defend against munitions that cost a small fraction of the cost of the Patriot. So are we going to see a Hail Mary coming out of Iran to try to flood the zone? We don't know. We don't know what their inventories are. We don't know how much they had to start with. We don't know what they've used in the meantime. We don't know. And we certainly don't know what's been struck. Seven hours ago, we got word from Bloomberg that an oil tanker had cleared the Strait of Hormuz and was heading to Pakistan. And in fact, that may be the same one that another source claimed was oil being sold for Chinese yuan. We got an alert that the keyword meta is trending. Now, I guess I'll take this opportunity to talk about layoffs, because oil affects the global economy, but you've got some other catalysts happening as well. You've got stress in the private credit market in the United States, and then you have a lot of layoffs, a lot of people losing their jobs in the tech space in the US. And those are very high paying jobs. You've got Meta, which is Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp. They're going to fire 20% of their workforce. And 20% is a lot. It's a big number. I think they have 60,000 employees, so 20% of that is 12,000. So 12,000 very high-paid people at Meta will be fired. Amazon's doing the same thing. Oracle's doing the same thing. the AI economy is now firing people. I wanted to mention that. And they present it, the companies present it, they go back and forth on it. On the one hand, they're saying that they're replacing those employees with increased use internally of AI tools. So if you have an AI tool that becomes good enough at writing code, you can start to shrink your development teams. That's one side of the story that they're saying. The other side of the story that they're saying is that they've made such big long-term dollar commitments to build out data centers and infrastructure that those commitments force them to lower other expenses like payroll. That's what we're hearing out of the big tech companies, the companies that are in the AI business. Let me show you this. This is from Parth Rastogi, and I don't know anything about Parth Rastogi. They've got some followers. Dubai economy under pressure, multiple pillars cracking at the same time. The real estate index is down 35% in 2 weeks. Now, what's interesting about that, just out of curiosity, yesterday, I was looking at high-end real estate listings in Tel Aviv, Israel, Beirut, Lebanon, and Tehran, Iran. I was looking at nice residential properties in those three areas. Israel is insanely expensive. Insanely expensive. I'm seeing 900 square meter penthouse apartments for $30 million in Tel Aviv. Rockets are falling in Tel Aviv. You're paying 8 figures for an apartment. Beirut was more expensive than I expected too. Bombs are falling on Beirut. The real estate is higher than I thought. It's not hard to spend $1 million US for not an extravagant house in Beirut. And then Tehran was a little bit softer, but still more expensive than I thought. And then Parth Rastogi comes in and tells us that real estate in Dubai is down 35% in 2 weeks. I don't know how to square that up. They say that corporate bonds in UAE, that is when companies look to raise money by selling debt, are the worst performers in emerging markets. When they say that they're the worst performers, they're probably talking about the price of the bonds. Because if the risk increases, which it should have, the rates of the bonds go up. And when rates go up, the price of the bond goes down. So that's my interpretation of that. And they're saying that the UAE corporate bonds are the worst performing in emerging markets. There's some economic and financial news for you. Reuters says Japan and Australia are not planning to send naval vessels to the Middle East. Japan and Australia are not planning to send Navy vessels to the Middle East. Reuters says that the United States is running out of shock absorbers to cushion the oil market. Last week, they announced that they would release oil inventory from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. I said that would not help much, and it would not help for long. And it seems as if Reuters agrees with that. Now, the price of gas in the United States has gone up, but it hasn't gone up by much. I've seen reports of 6 cents, 2 cents. They're small daily moves relative to like Asia, the Philippines. where you're getting 20% overnight spikes. Here's a report from War Monitor on X saying that Hezbollah publishes footage of them targeting a Merkava tank belonging to the Israeli army on the southeastern outskirts of the town of Merkava. Where's that? That is in Lebanon. Merkava is in Lebanon. Now, the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, they were maybe they were floating this as a trial, a test balloon. They said that they were considering calling up 450,000 reserve members of the Israeli Defense Force in anticipation of a large ground assault on Lebanon. And what made that more interesting was that they also announced that they plan on holding talks with Lebanon that would avoid that. So they may be floating the prospect of raising 450,000 soldiers as a negotiating tool. We don't know. All right, guys, we're coming up on 2 hours on this stream, and not seeing a lot of activity in the chat. So I'm going to start wrapping this thing up. I'm going to wrap this stream up. We've done good work today on YouTube. We had more views today than any of the previous 3 streams on YouTube, and that's good. If you are still watching, if you haven't done so already, sub up to the YouTube channel so we can keep growing our presence on other platforms and get the good word out to people about Tangle. That's what we're doing. There's video footage coming out of Dubai, posted by Massimo. And the point they're trying to make here is that Dubai is a ghost town. Beaches are empty, restaurants are empty, hotels are empty. Nothing's going on. Everybody left. They either left or they're hunkered down in one of those luxury buildings. All right, that'll be our coverage for today, unless something else happens. I'll be continuing to monitor the news, and if anything interesting, any good breaking news happens, we will be back to report on it. But until then, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning into YouTube for this stream. It was only on YouTube, not on Tangled. And we will take it from here and catch you on the next stream. Talk to you guys later.